I thought we had enough damage characters as it is, but Blizzard seems to disagree because we have hero number 29, Ashe, the primary hit scan character, adding to the plethora of damage that we already have in the game. I'd really like to see another shield tank because I think they are underpicked and sort of underappreciated, but what do I know? So this is going to be less of a technical video and more of an impressions video. If you want to see something with a little bit more research in it, please request a tutorial because I might be interested in doing one. So just let me know in the comments. So let's just talk about the character a little bit. This is her gun. It's called the Viper. It's a lever action rifle. Has one glaring issue. Don't know if you can tell what that is. But the problem is the hammer at the back there decides to not stay cocked when you operate the lever action. When you cycle the action there, the hammer just falls forward. I don't know, it's a futuristic gun, so maybe it doesn't need to stay cocked to fire, but then again, why would there be a hammer in the first place? I don't know, it just goes against everything I've ever seen and know about lever action rifles. Maybe it functions on different principles, but I don't know. I'd like to see a little bit more quote-unquote authentic. I mean, it does have a flip-up reflex sight coming out of the barrel area, so who knows? The hip fire is pretty insane. Does around 20 to 40 damage. Damage fall off isn't too bad. Has a little bit of accuracy bloom, but not enough that it matters. Like I said, this is not going to be very technical. Just a little bit of subjective thoughts. Secondary fire or scoped fire does a lot more damage. Exactly twice as much damage. Has a little bit less fall off, but it can do a massive amount of damage. One difficulty I've noticed is that it doesn't zoom in nearly as much as something like Widowmaker's scope, so it can make damage at extremely long range difficult because you might have some difficulty with target acquisition or just stability because of the different sensitivities. But get in and play the character, you might have a different experience than I do. The one thing that it's pretty cool to try and keep in mind is that since your hip fire is so accurate, you might want to use that to finish off characters instead of having to stay in scope fire and deal with that much slower rate of fire. So first ability is this coach gun, taken directly out of Team Fortress 2, just like 80% of the game, but it is a dual damage mobility skill for the character, does a lot of blowback. The fall off for the blowback is not that much, but it almost completely goes away around 12 meters. Past that, you will not blow that character back nearly as much, and 14 to 15 meters, not at all. But anything less than that, and you get a severe amount of blowback to the point where I think this is the best weapon for environmental kills. So at that range, it still has enough power to blow that character off the map. When you're moving or using this as a mobility skill, it's going to be most useful for elevation changes. So aiming at the ground with a little bit of a jump, it's going to get you up to pretty much anything on the map that you need to hit. As far as lateral movement, significantly less. That being said, if you've got something like a Reinhardt right up in your face, you can throw that down, blow him back and yourself in the process, and get out of the range of that hammer swing. Even getting hooked by a Roadhog, it's going to be great if you can somehow avoid that pole. Your character has a pretty small frame, so being able to hit this character is going to be difficult. So finally we have the Dynamite, which is a throwable. Takes a little bit of time to go off, but it does about 30 to 70 damage depending on how far away from the dynamite the character is, and then 100 points of burn damage if they have no armor, taking the character all the way down to 25 damage, or 25 health at the maximum amount of damage for this thing, which is absolutely incredible. It can be detonated if you shoot it, so it will go off immediately, but the timer does not start unless it hits a flat surface. So for this thing to be most effective, you want to be able to get good at throwing it at a character and then hitting it in flight so they have no time to react. Here it's going to be, that was pretty close, so it's going to take them down to a smaller amount of health. But during that burn, you want to be able to land another hit on them, and if you can, that will be 100% of their damage, assuming they're not near a health pack or an enemy healer for them to latch onto. So the final ability is the ultimate, and it is pretty neat. It's going to do a solid amount of damage when it hits somebody. So he does a charge. This calls in Bob, and I unfortunately missed everybody, but you can see he will land on the map and then just do a surprising amount of damage with his projectile-based... Well, I mean, it looks projectile-based, but it's actually hit scan. It has an incredible amount of accuracy. Cool thing about Bob is that he is essentially a non-playable character that can be affected just like any other character. So he can be nano boosted, he can be damage boosted or healed by mercy, he can be EMP'd by an enemy, so he can he will stop functioning altogether because he is an Omnic, and it, you know, like something like a turret or Symmetra's turrets, they go down when they get EMP'd. He can be nano boosted, he can be booped off the map, he can be charged by Reinhardt. There's a lot of stuff that you can do to him or against him, so it'll be interesting to see how he is used in the future. I've charged up the ultimate again so you can see Bob running into combat. He pretty much spawns directly where you are, maybe a little bit over your shoulder, and runs on a direct path to wherever you're pointing. So I'm going to try and throw him at that enemy down there. You can see he charges in with reckless abandon, and he keeps moving until he hits a surface where he will hit anyone in his path. He can get charged by a Reinhardt on route to wherever he's going, but generally speaking, he will go wherever you're pointed and then stay there for the duration of the ultimate, which is admittedly not that long. So what are my thoughts on Ashe at this point? Well, she's an extremely difficult character to play. You have to be very, very good at hit scan to get the most out of her. If you get locked into a very close range combat against Tracer or McCree, it could turn ugly really fast because all you have to defend yourself is your hip fire and potentially your coach gun. That dynamite, if you set it off too close to you, it can do a lot of damage to your own character, so up to about 100 damage, which is less than what you're going to do to the enemy, but they're going to be a little bit better close range than you are, unless you're dealing with something like a Widowmaker, and then it might be a little bit more of a fair fight. So if you are good at hit scan, if you do like playing McCree, Soldier, Widowmaker, this is going to be a character that you can get into pretty quickly. That dual fire, which is kind of like Ana's, takes a little bit getting used to. You really have to convince yourself that going from scope fire to hip fire to finish off an enemy is going to be the best way to do it. The cooldown from getting off of scope fire is a little bit longer, but staying in scope fire where you're having to spend almost twice as long between shots to just maybe land one or two to finally end that character is not going to be worth it. You really just need to try and remember using hip fire a lot. It's funny because I actually sometimes found myself using hip fire only. It's so accurate even at range that you can be a little bit more mobile. I mean, scope fire does slow your character's movement down and makes you a lot easier to hit, especially if you're trying to take out an enemy sniper. If you're able to just hip fire, jump around, and land more like 4 or 5 shots as opposed to 3 scope shots, that might be the better way to go. So you get in and play with the character and see what works best for you. It's going to be situational. If you do have something like a Reinhardt or Orisa shield to stand behind, then maybe going into scope fire and picking your shots is going to be the way to go. But if you have to be mobile and basically be your own damage mitigation, then I think hip fire might work out for you. But if that's the case, maybe you need to pick another character. So that dynamite is really interesting as well. Granted, in the PTR, I was spending most of my time in No Limits, the arcade mode, playing against other Ashe characters who have a very small hitbox area. So going into scope fire was pretty tough. I found that using dynamite was actually almost my primary technique. I spent a lot of time figuring out how to plan the trajectory of the dynamite and get it to exactly where the enemy character was and detonating it right on time, because I mean, if you get it close to them, that is 175 points of damage, which for most characters is just a melee shot away from death. So that dynamite is pretty insane. Coach gun's a lot of fun too. It's great as mobility skill. I found that sometimes even covering a gap, like running across an area where you know it's getting watched by a Widowmaker or a very strong character, using that coach gun to kind of clear that area quickly can be helpful. It's great. It can get you higher than almost any other abilities that's not Pharah's jump or Widowmaker's grapple gun. So it really does work well, and it has so many different uses that you have to remind yourself that it's so multifaceted. I mean, blowing enemies off the map, it might be the best one. It certainly surpasses Lucio's boop. It's going to blow back enemies at like a 45-degree angle, so you don't have to manage something where Lucio, where you're like aiming at the ceiling to try and get your enemies booped off the map as far as possible. And even at far range, we were talking earlier, around 12 meters, it still does a solid amount of push damage, so it can be incredible for getting enemies away from you, and has a secondary effect of moving you further away from them as well, to a range that's going to be more beneficial for you with your hit scan. Admittedly, you have a lot of you have 12 rounds to fire off pretty quickly from the hip, but still, if you're not confident or if you're in a panic situation, that can be extremely lethal for you. Now, moving on to Bob, he's pretty awesome, something we haven't seen before. He's great at just going in and mixing something up. If you can trap 2 enemy characters around 200 health, he can take them down in like 3 seconds at almost any range. So he's going to be great if you can learn how to throw him like around a corner. He's going to really get enemies out of the open, so great for taking a point, for getting people off from around the area of the payload. But keep in mind that he can't move and he can't really shoot over surfaces. So if you throw him onto a payload, he's not going to be able to shoot the other side of it or get around a corner. He's still great, and it'll be fun to see how people use him in the future. So that's Ashe. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like I said, this isn't super technical. Play the character for a lot, and I've done my research on the numbers and how she's most effective, or at least how I believe she's most effective. But if you want to see something more technical, please let me know in the comments, and I will work on something like a tutorial, something I've been thinking about for most of the Overwatch characters, but didn't know if there was the desire to see that from you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you thought about my video in the comments. Again, this is just my take, subjective, and this is very early days. She just got out of the PTR, so everything I said is subject to change. But again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.